Hello and welcome to the First and 10 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Feltz. I'm here in Bloomington, Indiana, and we're recording this on the night of Monday, November 16th, 2020. We're ready to talk about week 4 of Big Ten football, plus our bowl projections. We've got that lined up. I'm excited to talk about bowl projections. That's one of my favorite things we've ever gotten to do on this show, and I think we're at the point of the season where we can reasonably do some bowl projections. It's not, way too early. It is a reasonable time for bowl projections, I'd say. But joining me today is my co-host, as always, Reid Murray. What's going on, Reid?
We got no Ohio State to discuss today, but I'm fine with that because we get to talk about bowl season. We get to talk about the national landscape, something I really love to get into. So ready to break down some Big Ten action as well as some national college football stuff.
Right, Buckeyes game against Maryland canceled. So for those of you watching on our YouTube channel, First and 1G on YouTube, you can see Reid does not have his Ohio State victory shirt on today. Unfortunately, we don't get to see that beauty of a shirt. But we're going to talk about bowls. We're going to talk about bowl season at the end of this show, so stay tuned for that. And bowl season, by the way, officially called bowl season now. That's like the official name for it, which I think is hilarious.
Yeah, I'm still kind of confused about the whole bowl season name distinction thing, but I'm sure you can explain it well.
Yeah, I don't know really what there is to explain. The bowl committee or the NCAA or whoever, college football playoff, I don't know. They're calling bowl games bowl season now. So happy 5 weeks until bowl season, folks. We're hanging in there. We've got 5 more weeks of Big Ten regular season football, plus the Big Ten championship game in that 5th week to talk about and to watch. We're as excited as you are. So stay tuned for that. But let's talk about these games first that happened this week. Here in week 4, let's talk about the first game, the Friday night game, Iowa and Minnesota. As good as both of these teams have been the last decade or so, they've both been pretty good. Iowa, I think, has been a little better than Minnesota. But, for the last 5 years, Minnesota's been a pretty decent team, at least since PJ Fleck was hired. Iowa has low-key dominated this series. Iowa won their 6th straight Floyd of Rosedale Trophy. They beat Minnesota 35-7. We're all the way out on Minnesota, right? There's no getting back in.
I don't think a football team has ever disappointed me the way the 2020 Minnesota Golden Gophers have. And it pains me to say that. As the biggest Minnesota backer that you'll hear on Big Ten amateur podcast coverage.
Not sure how many of those there are.
But yeah, you'll never see a Big Ten podcast host who believed in Minnesota more than I did. And they let me down. They disappointed me. Tanner Morgan, I thought he was going to be the next big Heisman sleeper, and he just flat out isn't. He's just not good. And that's one of the main problems with this team is just that their offense relies way too heavily on one player. And if you shut him down, you shut down the whole offense because, you got Rashad Bateman. If he's locked up, Morgan is not going to be able to find a way to pass the ball to anybody else. So you need to basically, to beat Minnesota, it's a very easy recipe. You just stop the run and Mo Ibrahim, and you double team Rashad Bateman. And Minnesota will get a few points, get some yards here and there, but they're never going to beat you if you do those things. And I love it.
Well, I think with Minnesota, the other thing is Ibrahim's going to get his. He's going to get his yards. He is a great running back. And Rashad Bateman is going to get his too. He is a great receiver. He was basically the whole passing game. I mean, Tanner Morgan threw for 167 yards, and 1 touchdown, 2 picks, less than 50% of his passes completed, by the way. And 111 of those 167 yards, and that 1 singular touchdown that Morgan threw to Rashad Bateman. He's their whole passing game. And I was afraid in the offseason, I said this in July, that losing Tyler Johnson was going to hurt them a lot more than people said it would. And lo and behold, it has. Tanner Morgan looks completely pedestrian without Tyler Johnson and just being the Rashad Bateman show in that passing game. And, if the defense could maybe stop a nosebleed or anything, if they could have a pulse on defense, not even be good, but just be passable. And if they had another target besides Bateman, this team might even be better than last year. If you kept Tyler Johnson and you kept Antoine Winfield Jr., this team would probably be a very good team, similar to last year's team, maybe better, because I don't think Morgan falls off the way he does if he's still got that security blanket in Tyler Johnson. And that defense certainly does not crumble as much as it has this year if you have Antoine Winfield Jr. So seeing the fall of Minnesota from how good they were last year to what we've seen this season, I don't know how surprising it is really when you look at how important those two guys were to that team, who they lost in Johnson and Winfield Jr. But it is surprising and it's incredibly disappointing. And it really makes you question if PJ Fleck is worth it in the end, because they put a lot of trust into him and a lot of money into him. Think he's still the guy?
Well, I still think Fleck is a tremendous coach, but at the end of the day, when you look at this team, it comes down to recruiting. You had a few stars, they're gone, and they did a horrible job in the recruiting game in the last few years. And this season, they have, I believe, 5 stars in their incoming recruiting class. So,
well, they don't need 5 stars. They're Minnesota. There's only a handful of 5 stars in every single class. You can't expect Minnesota to pull 5 stars. That is unreasonable. You can't expect anybody in the Big Ten to pull a 5-star except Ohio State every year. They're going to get 4 or 5. Michigan every once in a while, and maybe Penn State, and hell, Maryland got one. So
Minnesota wasn't even getting 4 stars. And if you want to be able to go 11-2 or so consistently, if you want to be winning Outback or Citrus level bowl games, you got to be able to recruit better. And they simply didn't. This Minnesota team, it's just they did not have the depth, and they did not build this team in such a way that losing 2 key players like Johnson and Winfield Jr. is something they can move on from. It just simply wasn't. And at the end of the day, it comes down to recruiting, and it comes down to how this team is built. So I still think Fleck is a tremendous coach, but their recruiting game for Minnesota's got to be better if they want to continue having seasons like they did in 2019, 2020.
And the thing with the recruiting is the rest of the Big Ten West is recruiting extremely well. Look at Wisconsin. They're recruiting incredibly well, especially with Graham Mertz, who I'm sure we'll talk about later. Purdue's recruiting better than they ever have. Northwestern's even landing a lot of guys, and as poor as Nebraska's been for the last couple of years, the recruiting is always going to be there, and especially Frost. Really, the recruiting's picked up for Nebraska. It's not gotten worse. So if you're Minnesota, you don't want to get left in the dust, because eventually talent's going to win out, and you can have a great coach. And I think PJ Fleck, I'm still not out on him. I might be out on the Gophers this season, not out on PJ Fleck. But if they can start recruiting, I'd say similarly to the way Purdue's been recruiting, then maybe they can find that success they had last season. But if not, the depth is just not going to be there. You're absolutely right. And the other question is, Rashad Bateman, of course, he opted out initially, and then he opted back in to join the Gophers this season for what he thought would be an incredible team that could maybe contend for a New Year's Six bowl game, maybe make it to the Big Ten title game. Is it time for Rashad Bateman to opt back out? Would you, if you were Rashad Bateman, would you continue playing this season when you don't want to get COVID, you don't want to get hurt for the NFL, because he's going to the NFL next season, because he's certainly good enough. He's going to be a high draft pick. If you're him, do you want to save your body and just train for the NFL?
Well, I mean, hindsight is 2020 when it comes to, now we're looking at it. Well, what a bad decision by Bateman to come back for this horrible Minnesota team. But we didn't know that before. And at this point, I personally, if I was Rashad Bateman, would not opt back out, just because you're on the team and, I love to play. I want to get on the field. So I personally wouldn't, but I would understand if he would. And obviously, I'm not a D1 athlete. I don't know what it's like to be having these kind of thoughts of being not wanting to lose your draft stock, not wanting to get injured, not wanting to get sick, not wanting to have your career ruined in some kind of way. So it's easy for me to say that I wouldn't quit on your team, but you really can't say unless you're one of these guys, unless you've been to that level of football. So I don't really feel like I have the position where I can say what he should or shouldn't do in this situation.
Right. And it's easy to say you don't want him to quit on your team. You don't want to quit on your teammates. You're absolutely right about that. Anybody who's played a team sport knows how much it means to build that brotherhood and that bond between your guys. You never want to let them down. You want to give your all for them as much as you can. Everybody knows that and everybody feels that. But when you're at that highest level, you're absolutely right, Reid. You can't really know unless you've been there, because for Bateman, let's say he gets an injury, that could tank his NFL draft stock. And there is a lot of money on the line. And there is a huge difference between being a first or second round pick and being fourth or fifth round pick, because one injury can do that to your draft stock. It can absolutely tank it. And there goes a lot of life changing money. And don't get me wrong, life changing money you'll get in the NFL, even if you're a fourth or fifth round pick. But pretty big difference between that and even the job security of a first rounder or a second rounder versus a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounder. The money, the job security, and really your skill set as a whole, can all be affected by one injury. So I don't blame him if he opts out. In fact, it makes a lot of sense for numerous reasons. But at the same time, it's like you kind of owe it to your guys. You came back for a reason. You owe it to those guys in that locker room to keep playing and giving your all for the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
Yeah, and pivoting into the Iowa Hawkeyes, we've seen some really good work from Tyler Goodson through 4 weeks. Where do you rate him among Big Ten running backs?
Well, Goodson, he's basically carried Iowa's offense because Spencer Petras has been so below average. He is just a below average quarterback. There's no really ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's why I was so low on Iowa coming to the season, because we knew nothing about Petras, and that had me worried. Lo and behold, I was right. There wasn't a lot to like about his performance this game against Minnesota, but Goodson just carried the team. And I think he's a great running back. I just do. I think he's better than some of the guys who I had ranked ahead of him in the preseason. I think the top three running backs I said in the Big Ten in the preseason were going to be Stevie Scott, Journey Brown, and Trey Sermon in some order. Sermon's not looked that great. Journey Brown's not gotten to play, wishing him all the best. And Stevie Scott, although he's got a lot of touchdowns and he's made some great plays, he's not been great this season. He's basically just truck guys for touchdowns and short yardage. He's not really gotten a lot of giant chunk plays, and I think a lot of that you can attribute to Indiana's play calling. They're not calling the plays that Scott should be getting, which is outside carries and zone runs where he's taking it to the outside. They're giving him nothing but inside handoffs and dives, stuff like that, which inside running for Indiana has not worked all season, and they tried to do it a lot against Michigan State too, and it's just not working. So I don't see why they keep doing it, and I think that's hurting Stevie Scott a lot. But with Goodson, I think him and Ibrahim are probably the class of Big Ten at the running back position, right?
Yeah.
Just judging by the numbers and judging by what I've seen on the field, these guys are the cream of the crop.
You're right about that. And yeah, it's unfortunate that the situation happened with Journey Brown, and also the fact that, I thought Trey Sermon was going to come in and just be lights out at running back at Ohio State, and especially judging from his production at Oklahoma his first few years there. But he just hasn't lived up to that hype. Maybe he just doesn't fit in the offensive system. But yeah, you got to say that Tyler Goodson is probably the second best running back in the Big Ten. I don't think there's any question that Ibrahim is number one, but you got Goodson and Stevie Scott, who I would say are in the top three. So I'm in agreement with you on that. And I think Iowa just needs to sort of scrap the whole Spencer Petras passing game. He's just not there yet. He's not a good enough quarterback. Iowa, they already run the ball more than they pass it, but I think they need to ramp it up even further, to be honest.
Yeah, I think they should run basically a 2019 Colts offense. Run the damn ball. That's the mantra for Iowa. Put it on a hat, put it on a T-shirt. That is Iowa football in its purest form. Tommy Devine, I actually bought him a run the damn ball hat for Christmas last year, so maybe he can paint it in black and yellow and gift it to the Hawkeyes. But they got to run the ball more. And it's working when they've done it. It's working because Petras just isn't there, but run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And, usually in an offense, you run to set up the pass. But I think with Iowa, maybe they should try passing to set up the run.
It might just work.
Might just work. I don't know if the coaching staff will be all the way in on that. And before we go, though, I did want to touch on those running backs again. Just one last thought, because we're not going to get to talk about Ohio State today. Trey Sermon's performance has really shown me how good J.K. Dobbins was. If J.K. Dobbins himself didn't show you how good he was, the way Trey Sermon has performed this season shows you that J.K. Dobbins was a special talent and is kind of irreplaceable.
On one hand, yes. And J.K. Dobbins is going to go down as one of the best running backs in Ohio State history. But on the other hand, I think part of the reason Trey Sermon hasn't lived up to what he thought he was going to be is just a testament to this Ohio State passing offense. I mean, they don't really need to run the ball under him too much because they have the best quarterback in college football, and either the best or maybe the second best. If you want to argue Alabama has the best receiving core. Either way, they have a top 2 receiving core in the nation, and their passing game has looked flawless so far. So I think if you put Trey Sermon on almost any other team in the Big Ten, especially some of these teams like Rutgers or Maryland, he's going to look like one of the best backs. It's really just, I think, comes down to Ohio State doesn't need him. So I think if they gave him more touches, he would get much better numbers. But at the end of the day, they can pass the ball well enough. They're not relying on him. And Master Teague has also looked incredible. So it's not really even Trey Sermon's starting job. It's kind of split carries between 2 good backs who the Ohio State doesn't need to, the offense does not need to rely upon.
Yeah, you're right about that. And we'll see this week because I think they're going to have to rely on the running backs more against Indiana because the Indiana pass defense is so great.
We'll see about that. I mean, I believe in the Indiana pass defense. It's incredible. But like I said, there's only so much you can do against arguably the best receiving core in the nation, plus Justin Fields.
Certainly going to be a matchup to watch and probably our game of the week. But let's not dwell too much on that game. We've still got a whole lot of games to talk about from week 4. Let's get into our next game from week 4 here in the noon slate. Let's talk about the Hoosiers. Indiana getting it done on the road in East Lansing against Michigan State. 24-0. 0 second half points from the Hoosiers. Kind of had me concerned. And, I think it's a good thing that I can watch my team win 24-0 and still be disappointed. I think that shows you how far this team has come.
You're right about that. And in this game, I got to say, Ty Freifogel, everyone's been talking about him after his performance against Michigan and Michigan State. He was a monster in this game. I still don't think he's as good of a receiver as Whop Phillier. But you got to recognize, though, the growth of Freifogel from last season and even week 1, because don't think I'm a Freifogel hater. That really just a compliment to Whop Phillier, to be honest. Freifogel, he dropped a few key passes in week 1, and he wasn't really on top of his game. And had he been more on top of his game, Indiana probably would have won much more comfortably and really wouldn't have had to go into overtime, I don't think. But now he's arguably, I don't think he's the best receiver on this Indiana team, but you could make the case for him. That's really good for Indiana when you have a duo of receivers who could be considered great or elite. So that is awesome for Hoosier fans, and that's going to be crucial when you go into these games against teams like Ohio State, Wisconsin, potentially Northwestern if you face them in a crossover game, something like that. But I got to say, Indiana fans, you got to be worried about Michael Penix, because if he plays against Ohio State the way he played against Michigan State or Rutgers, Ohio State's going to win by 5 touchdowns. And that's just the fact of the matter. I mean, he's been throwing too many picks or passes that really should be picks against secondaries other than that of Michigan State. So he is going to have to really ramp it up next week and look more like he did against Michigan, or else the Indiana team might be in trouble.
Well, everybody hopes that their quarterback can look the way they look against Michigan, right? But a lot of those passes from Penix, I mean, he threw 2 picks in this game against Michigan State. You can't be happy with that, obviously. But I think that's just kind of the way he was playing. I think he was told take some more risks. Obviously, they kind of felt like this Michigan State game, I don't want to say it was in the bag, but they probably knew they were going to win it. So they were going to take more risks offensively, throw some balls that you might not be comfortable with throwing. And I think one of those balls that you won't be comfortable with throwing was that 60-plus yard touchdown from Ty Freifogel, where he really got it around Michigan State's defender. And it's a dangerous ball, and I think you're going to play a lot more conservative against Ohio State, but you want to try things like that. And that's why I think in the second half, too, the team got down the field really well. They didn't score a point, but they got down the field. IU did. I think the play calling, they wanted to try some things, get it on tape, and just see what they could do, because the game was out of reach by the second quarter. Just the way it is. They wanted to try some things out, and I think a lot of that you're not going to see in the Ohio State game. So I'm not too worried about the performance by IU. And you got to remember, it's a road win in the division where you shut out the other team. You got to be happy with it, or else, I mean, what else are you going to do? What else can you ask for? A more consistent road win where you shut out the opponent?
Yeah, especially by Indiana
standards. You take the shutout. You take the shutout. I mean, you shut out a team who has traditionally owned you on the road. It's great.
And it is great. And all I'm saying, I understand about taking more risks, and this is a game where you're pretty confident you're going to win right from the kickoff. But like I said, there's a few passes, mainly that deep pass, or not deep pass, but the 60 or so yard touchdown for Ty Freifogel, where I say, if Sean Wade's covering, that's pick six. And hopefully for Indiana, if you're an Indiana fan, you do want to see a more conservative Michael Penix. But on the other hand, Michael Penix isn't a quarterback who is conservative. He's a quarterback who you'd like to see him unleashed. You'd like to see him just sling the ball. So if you try to sort of contain him into a more conservative style offense, that might actually come back to hurt you.
I think the difference between conservative for Michael Penix and conservative, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying Michael Penix is going to be a more conservative quarterback, but conservative for regular offense means short passes. Conservative for Michael Penix means not throwing to covered receivers because he can do it. He can complete it. Sometimes he might throw an interception. He's just going to try and find open guys. Maybe that means throwing short instead of taking the risk on the long ball, but he took a lot of risks in this game because he could. Can't do that against Ohio State. So maybe that closes the offense a little more. Maybe it makes the offense more consistent. We're going to have to see. But one thing that Indiana's defense isn't going to have to be worried about really is the secondary, who just had an amazing game yet again. And for 4 straight games, we've seen that the secondary is elite and they can own a team. They can shut a team down. Ohio State is going to be their biggest test against probably the best quarterback in the country and arguably the best receiving corps in the country. It's going to be tough. And if there's any game where the secondary is going to look bad, it's going to be Ohio State. But even if they do, I don't think it's time to be out on Indiana secondary because they have these 4 performances that have been incredible. And they did get a few gifts from Rocky Lombardi and co in this game, though.
You're right. And Michigan State, on one hand, you want to be disappointed after this one, but on the other hand, they just got absolutely smacked around by Iowa, and then they went and played any team. What more could you expect, honestly? I think Michigan State, they might as well have called their season after that Michigan win because that's the highest they're ever going to get. I don't think they win another game this year, and it's sad to say because you see that Michigan win, you think there's so much potential in the team, but I don't see it happening again. And I think this Michigan State team has peaked. They peaked too early, and they're never going to reach those heights again.
And this Michigan State team, I think, is going to test the question that you see online and you talk with your friends about. I think everybody has thought about this question before. Would you take a season where you lose every single game, but you beat your rival? Would you take that? Or would you rather have a season where you win every game except the rivalry game? And Michigan State is really putting that to the test this year because it's starting to look like they aren't going to win a game except for the battle for Paul.
Yeah, maybe they pull one out against, say, Maryland, something like that, but I just don't see it. Or maybe they win the crossover game against likely Illinois from the West. We shall see, but it's not looking too good for the Spartans right now.
I agree. It's looking messy. Peyton Thorne starting to look like the starting quarterback, though. He wasn't great, but he was better than Rocky Lombardi.
You're right about that. And it's tough being a young quarterback thrown into an offense that's failing like this. I mean, these are his first college snaps, and they're against Indiana. So you do have to feel for a guy like that. But hopefully for him, he'll start to be able to put some points on the board. It's rough. It's kind of like the Tolia situation, where his first college snaps, or really his first college snaps were at Alabama, but his first college start was an absolute beatdown by Northwestern. Very similar. He goes in, he faces a tough Indiana defense in his first real time as the quarterback for the green and white. That's just unfortunate.
Tough break. Tough break. But Indiana going to this Ohio State game, they're more confident than they've ever been going into Ohio State game, I think. Take that as a good sign, take that as a bad sign, but they're confident, and we're going to have to see what happens. Certainly going to be an interesting game this week, likely the Big Ten East Championship game.
I think it's not even a question because maybe you could say that the Ohio State-Maryland game last week would be the Big Ten Championship game, but that game's not happening. I don't really see any team other than Ohio State or Indiana coming back and winning it. It would take a serious 180 from both Ohio State and Indiana, or say Penn State or Michigan, to be able to win this division. I mean, Penn State's already got 4 losses. They're out of contention. Michigan, not looking great either. So I think you can go ahead and say pretty confidently the winner of this game will win the East.
Right. And I think you can say confidently that the winner of Wisconsin-Northwestern is going to win the West. So we might have 2 divisional championship games de facto divisional championship games, I should say, this coming Saturday, and that is going to be a lot of fun to watch. And they're back to back; they're not at the same time, so you can watch both of them. It should be a fun Saturday of college football in the Big Ten. Moving on to another noon game, Penn State, Nebraska. Penn State is the only winless team in the Big Ten after this loss. What? How did that happen? How did we get here? Penn State is 0-4 for the first time since 01. How did we get here, Reid?
James Franklin. I mean, well, we really got here from injuries and losses like Journey Brown, Micah Parsons, and those who graduated and went to the NFL draft. But it's just disappointing when you have a team who recruits well. You have everything a recruit would ever want in a school. You play in a prestigious conference. You lose two big guys, and all those other 5 and 4 stars can't step up, and they can't do enough for this team. And a lot of that comes down to James Franklin. But on the field, the problem for Penn State is Sean Clifford, because you can't put the blame on a guy like Devin Ford. I mean, he's a third stringer who's come in, and he's done a fine job, especially for a third string running back at a school like Penn State. And on a team like this Nittany Lions team, you need a starting quarterback who's going to be a guy who is on at all times. And that's just not what Sean Clifford is. He makes too many little mistakes. He just isn't consistent enough. He's not a guy you can look at and be like, yes, this is the leader. This is the guy we want to emulate. And I would be shocked if Will Levis is not the starter against Iowa next week. This Penn State team needs to move forward. And Clifford was a bit of a dual threat before. Now they really need a dual threat guy since their running game. They lost their two main components of the run game, and they haven't really looked great passing either. They need a mobile quarterback who's going to be able to get it done with his legs, and Will Levis is that guy.
Yeah, I think Levis is the starter going forward for Penn State. It makes a lot of sense. They benched Clifford, and then they come back with Levis. I think if Levis is playing the whole game, maybe they win this. You know, they were down 27-6 at halftime, and Levis leads the comeback. They only lose 30-23. So they came close, but obviously not enough in the end. I think if Levis is the quarterback, they don't lose this game. I think Clifford's mistakes, 2 turnovers, they're winning this game without Sean Clifford.
I agree. And Will Levis seems, ever since that Ohio State game last year, he seems to be the guy who you put him in and all the problems seem to go away for a little bit. And we'll see how permanent that is, because, I mean, like that Ohio State game, whenever I think of Will Levis, I think of that Ohio State game, because Ohio State's defense was incredible last season. Nobody seemed to be able to do anything against them. Then Will Levis came in and had the quarter of his life and made the Ohio State defense look beatable. So that really stands out for me, for Will Levis. But the problem is going to be, can this guy actually win you? Can he play 4 full quarters and do this week in, week out? We don't know yet. We'll have to see. And Iowa's going to be a good test of that.
Speaking of backup quarterbacks, Luke McCaffrey took over the starting role for the Huskers. Looked a lot better than what we've seen from Adrian Martinez this season. And he's just as athletic and just as mobile as Martinez. So you didn't have to change the offense a whole lot. The difference is Luke McCaffrey's a winning quarterback. He got the job done here against Penn State.
He did. And he was one of the real bright spots of this team when they faced Ohio State week 1. He was one of the guys that the Buckeyes were having serious trouble stopping. And McCaffrey really reminds me of Taysom Hill, because he's a quarterback, but he's able to, I mean, he was a running back for a few plays against Ohio State. He's able to get the job done both on the ground as a running back and as a quarterback. We saw it last year in the game against Iowa. He was running the ball, and he did it pretty well. So as much as I like Adrian Martinez, at a certain point, he just can't get it done anymore. And now I think McCaffrey has developed to a point where he can take over his role and actually win games for Nebraska. They need a guy who's going to go in and actually get the job done, be clutch, win games for him. That's what McCaffrey did. So he is the future of Cornhusker football at this point, I would say.
It's starting to look like that, I think. And with those 2 starters who got benched, Clifford and Martinez, you think they transfer or you think they stay?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think I could see Martinez transferring, because he's still got he ought to have 2 years of eligibility left, right? Or he would at least have 1, considering that everybody has at least 1 more year of eligibility, because this 2020 season won't actually count and take a year off of your eligibility. I could see Martinez. I don't think Sean Clifford will, though. I think he can still fight for that starting job back, and I think that's going to keep him in Happy Valley. I don't think he eventually gets it. I don't think he becomes that guy again. But I can't really see Sean Clifford going to another school and having resounding success, unless maybe it's a G5, like say a Cincinnati or so. Well, not really Cincinnati because they have
Cincinnati would be a homecoming for him. You know, he went to St. X High School in Cincinnati, native of Cincinnati, Ohio. That one wouldn't be out of nowhere, I don't think. But
yeah, but I could see Clifford going to a school like, say, a UCF, SMU, Cincinnati, one of these bigger G5 schools, maybe in the American. But my prediction would be that he stays in Happy Valley.
Yeah, it's tough to predict a transfer until somebody actually even puts their name into the hat, into the portal. I guess not the hat, but it's tough to know it. But both of these quarterbacks, though, for Penn State and Nebraska, very mobile quarterbacks, and with that, I want to move into this Illinois versus Rutgers game because talk about a mobile quarterback, Isaiah Williams. He looked great. He only completed 7 passes the whole game. He's barely a quarterback. Ran for 192 yards and a touchdown, though. By the way, Isaiah Williams, backup quarterback for Illinois, who got the start. He's back from a contact tracing absence. Shares a name with former Illinois starter Juice Williams, Isaiah Juice Williams, who started for the Illini back when they made the Rose Bowl in 2007. See the second coming of Juice Williams.
He's got to have some sort of funny nickname similar to Juice. Maybe he's Apple, and the other guy is Juice.
I would call him the Juice Box. He's like a little Juice Williams.
I like that. Juice, or maybe like soda. I don't know.
We're calling Isaiah Williams Juice Box.
I like it. I like Juice Box Williams. Illinois looks like a different team under him, but I still think they're the worst team in the Big Ten. Actually, scratch that. I would say Michigan State is the worst at this point, but Illinois is still definitely at the bottom of the pack. And it's unfortunate when you go from going to the Red Box Bowl to being one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, who's probably going to finish the season either 1-8 or 2-7, depending on how that crossover game goes against the 7th place finisher in the East, likely to be Michigan State. But Rutgers, I told you guys Rutgers was overhyped and that they beat a bad Michigan State team, and all this talk about Rutgers not being the same team as they used to be was a little premature. Now, Rutgers still showing leaps and bounds of improvement, which is huge for them, being one of the worst programs in college football in the last 5 years. But like I said, they're just not there yet, and this game was real proof of it.
Rutgers is on the rise, but, you know, they're due to drop some. They're not just a flat-out better team that's just going to beat Illinois. They did beat Illinois for 59 minutes and 57 seconds, though. Illinois did not lead this game until the final 3 seconds. In fact, they've only led for 3 seconds all season. Thanks to James McCourt's game-winning field goal, the Illini have been in front of a scoreboard for 3 seconds. And they got to win, though. That's all you need. In fact, remember last year when McCourt kicked the game winner against Wisconsin, they led for 0 seconds of that game. I think that's just pretty funny. Yeah, not much to say about it, but I think it's funny.
It's a good stat.
What do you think? What do you think about Vedral, though? 3 interceptions. I think he basically was bailed out by Bo Melton. Melton 2 touchdowns, but Vedral looked bad.
Yeah, Vedra looked bad this week. I still like him as a quarterback there. I still like him as the guy who's going to take Rutgers forward. I mean, I don't think he's going to be this like prodigy who's going to single-handedly save Rutgers from the gutter they were in. But he's a good guy to elevate your program a little bit, and then hopefully, and really likely soon, they find their guy in the recruiting market. He's good for now. He's bound. I mean, he's not a perfect quarterback. He's bound to have games like this. But it doesn't bother me too much. I mean, if he doesn't throw 3 of those picks, Rutgers probably wins the game. But, hey, it's Rutgers football. What more do you expect?
Reid, I just realized we have not given out a player of the game for any of these games yet. Let's give out some players of the game. First for this Illinois-Rutgers game, since they're on the topic, got to be Juice Box, right? Isaiah Williams?
Got to be Juice Box Williams, yeah.
We're going with Juice Box for this one. Shout out to Juice Box. Let's go back. Let's move back to Iowa, Minnesota. Iowa, Minnesota player of the game. Tyler Goodson.
Yeah, you really got to give it to him here. I mean, 35 points for the Iowa team as a whole, and he was really the backbone of this offense. Got to give Goodson.
Indiana, Michigan State, it's Ty Freifogel, and it's not a competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
200 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it's Ty Freifogel. Penn State, Nebraska. I think is an interesting one. I think I'm gonna go Luke McCaffrey just for coming in and proving that he can be the guy.
I hate to agree with you on every single one of these. I got to go
Oh
McCaffrey.
man,
I mean, they're all pretty straight up picks. I mean, there's some clear winners this week, I think.
I agree. I think there have been some pretty clear winners. I think one where you might not have as clear of a winner is this next game. Although there was a clear winner on the field because it was just kind of a total domination until the end when the losing team crawled their way back into it. Couldn't quite pull it off, though. The Northwestern Wildcats go on the road to battle the Big Ten West undefeated teams. Well, 2 of the undefeated teams. You got to talk about Wisconsin later. Northwestern gets it done 27-20 on the road. Peyton Ramsey, 212 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. Purdue's last 2 losses, both to Peyton Ramsey. Old Oak and Bucket game against Indiana last year, 44-41 in double overtime. And this year, 27-20 on Saturday. Peyton Ramsey kind of owns Purdue.
Yeah. He kind of is Purdue's dad, to be honest. And I would really hate this guy if I was a Boilermaker fan. Once again, looked impressive, led his team to victory. And this game really went exactly as I expected. I mean, you got Purdue. They're going to move the ball, but they're not going to put up exceptional numbers against a strong Northwestern defense. And then you have a poor Purdue defense who's facing a good but not exceedingly great Northwestern offense. So this is kind of exactly what you'd expect. 27-20 game. Nothing really crazy went down in this one. Kind of just went down the way we saw it happening.
Yeah, and Northwestern, despite the score, they only won by 7. They were in total control of this game the whole time. Don't let the scoreboard fool you. They never sweated for a second. I don't think, at least, for my estimation for watching this game. And one disappointment, though, I think for Purdue has got to be David Bell, who was kind of just locked down by this Northwestern secondary. And we knew Northwestern had a great secondary coming into this game. But the fact that they just locked down David Bell really shows you that Purdue kind of still needs Rondale Moore to be healthy. And I'm starting to not think Rondale Moore is going to play a snap of football this season.
I don't think so either. And it's really unfortunate because he is one of the most exciting players in the FBS. And now there's a really good chance we don't get to see him play. But with his injury, I'm wishing him all the best. And, we don't really know the details of this injury. Purdue hasn't released very much information. So we don't know if it's super serious and this could actually have impacts on his football career, or if it was a minor injury and he just doesn't want to come back to Purdue to potentially hurt his draft stock or get injured again or anything like that. So we're not completely sure on the details here, but hopefully for him, for his sake and for the sake of everybody who likes watching football, he will be able to move on to the NFL safely and well.
Yeah, and my first thought with this was that that Purdue and Jeff Brom were not disclosing Rondale's injury to try and keep his NFL stock high. And, that is one thing, but at the same time, you think those NFL doctors at the combine and at those training days, they're going to find it. They're going to find his injury. If he's got an injury problem, that's not getting past an NFL front office. So I don't know why Purdue is being so secretive about his injury.
But Northwestern did a good job of rolling with it. They rolled with the punches, and they still were able to pass the ball very effectively. Ramsey did throw 1 interception, but he looked good throughout this game. And great job for Northwestern to go in here, take care of business, not let Purdue pull a Purdue win or a 2020 Purdue win. And I really think this Northwestern team is legit, and I think they deserve to be ranked somewhere higher than 19. They deserve some recognition. And going into this Wisconsin game, I don't think they beat Wisconsin, but I think they keep it close, and I think they're going to look impressive, although I still think they're going to lose to Wisconsin. Their ranking is going to drop, and they're not going to get the recognition they deserve. But you got to start taking them seriously. And I think they're going to get into a bowl game against somebody who they have no business playing, and they're going to beat the daylights out of them.
Yeah, Northwestern's for real. They're a for real team, and they're a little underranked. I saw this stat. Northwestern, every team they've beat hasn't lost the game to a team other than Northwestern. Tells you a lot about the strength of their schedule.
Well, I mean, it's 4 games in, so I don't think that's an incredible stat. I mean, it's good, but you can't really you can't make too many judgments off of that.
Yeah, but still, when some of these other schedules are looking weaker than we thought, especially like Indiana's. I mean, yeah, those are impressive wins given that Indiana hadn't beaten Penn State in 7 years and they hadn't beaten Michigan in 33. Those wins don't look great because those teams are just way weaker than they usually are. And Northwestern's wins look really good. I think Northwestern's a legit team. I was absolutely right about them in this preseason. And I'm happy for them that they're winning and that I called it because it feels good when you get a prediction just on the money, kind of like Reid with Minnesota last year. It feels really good.
It feels incredible, and it feels really good to be able to brag about it. If I were you, I'd be bragging a little bit more, but I see you handle success with your picks more graciously than I did last year, and I applaud you for that.
Yeah, and the thing is that we're only halfway through the season too. They could collapse tomorrow. It would be an unexpected collapse, but it could happen. For all I know, that this team gets COVID, falls apart, whatever, and they don't have that inside track to winning the West anymore. But it's starting to look like they are probably a team to be reckoned with here in the Big Ten West. At the very least, maybe even the whole conference, maybe even the nation. I think they're good. I think they're for real, and I'm all in on Northwestern even more than I already was.
Yeah, so player of the game here. I don't know how to say his full last name, and I really don't want to mispronounce it or butcher it, so I'm just going to leave out part of his name, but Ramad something Bowman.
I just call him RCB.
RCB, we'll call him that. RCB had 8 receptions, averaged 10.8 yards per reception, had 3 touchdowns. He balled out. He's got to be my player of the game, and you could give it to Peyton Ramsey too because he played well, but I don't want to give it to Ramsey every single week. So RCB gets player of the game honors from me.
RCB was going to be mine too. 3 touchdowns is just tough to beat. That's an impressive stat line. And had Purdue won this game, I was thinking Derek Barnes for player of the game. This guy had an awesome game for Purdue. He was basically their whole defense.
Yeah, you're right. And it's hard to be a standout on the Purdue defense when you're surrounded by guys who really aren't backing you up too much, and when you're playing a good quarterback and a solid offense, not great, solid on Northwestern. So props to him.
Yeah, the Boilermakers did not quite have it though, and the Northwestern Wildcats get it done. By the way, before we go though, I want to read that Derek Barnes stat line: 14 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss. Great game, especially with no George Karlaftis on the field for the Purdue Boilermakers. Can't get it done though, and they fall to the Northwestern Wildcats at home. Moving on to the next game, final game, Wisconsin and Michigan. Graham Mertz played, and what did I tell you? Because Graham Mertz was going to be on the field, this was going to be a blowout. Lo and behold, it was a blowout. In fact, one of the worst home losses in the history of Michigan football. Michigan has never trailed by more than 28 points in the 93-year history of Michigan Stadium. They never trailed by more than 28 points at halftime, that is. They were down 28-0 at the half. Michigan is done. And I'm all in on Wisconsin, too. This game against Northwestern this week is a battle of the Titans.
This one was rough, but Graham Mertz is the truth. I've been telling you this since the film session. I thought it was going to take him a while to settle in, but he has just right away gotten in and done a great job. And especially, I mean, I know that the Michigan DBs aren't really that good, but Illinois to Michigan is a jump. And the fact that he's going up against top tier teams and putting up numbers and putting up scores the way he did, that is impressive. That is phenomenal of him. So Graham Mertz, bright future and a bright present.
Right.
As good as Indiana is, I think this game proves that Wisconsin is just a flat out better team. It's clear to see when they beat a team like Michigan to a pulp. I mean, Indiana controlled that game against Michigan, but not to the extent to which Wisconsin did. And I was hating on Wisconsin going into the year saying, oh, why are they in the top 10s and all that? I think Wisconsin, they haven't quite earned themselves a spot over, say, Florida yet, but they could very well be the number 5 team by the end of the season. They are for real.
My biggest concern with Wisconsin coming into the season was not that Graham Mertz was not going to be the guy. I was high on Graham Mertz too, just like you were. My concern was that they weren't going to tool the offense around him, and they were going to run the same power running Jonathan Taylor, Melvin Gordon offense that they've been running for as long as I've been watching Wisconsin football. And they didn't. They are running an offense that really plays to the strengths of Graham Mertz. And surprising as that is, that's what it is. And Mertz didn't have his best game. He didn't play as well as he did against Illinois, but he was still really, really good. I think the other guy you got to be happy with if you're a Wisconsin fan is my player of the game, Jalen Berger, the freshman from New Jersey. 87 yards of a touchdown. I think this guy is their running back going forward. I think that Wisconsin has found another stud.
Yeah, he could be that guy of the future. And really, this Wisconsin offense, it's a lot like the U.S. men's national soccer team. It's young guys, but they're getting it done right now. And like I said, they're really good now, but they're going to be even better 2 years down the road. This Wisconsin team is not going to be one you want to mess with. And the fact they've found their guy at quarterback and running back, not something you want to see as an opposing team in the Big Ten.
They're the guys of the future, and they're the guys of right now for the Badgers. I think I was never in on Nakia Watson, and I was certainly never in on Garrett Groshek. I think those guys are old news. I really think that Jalen Berger's the guy at running back for the Badgers.
Mm-hmm. And he's only going to get better as time goes on. And speaking of guys who are going to get better, Joe Milton. He simply is not good enough to lead a young Michigan team to win or compete in games like this. And that's fine. That's what we expected. And we had a completely different opinion of Joe Milton after week 1 when he looked great against Minnesota. But now you look back at that, you say, hey, well, it's just Minnesota. Good game, impressive, but we got too carried away with it. Joe Milton, he's the guy of the future, but he is not the guy of right now, the way Graham Mertz is. That's fine. And I think that's part of the reason Michigan's not going to fire Harbaugh. First of all, he can play the pandemic card. Second of all, he can play the young team card. I think Michigan's going to hold on to him. As much as I don't think he is the right coach for that team, I think they keep him. I don't think there's much question that they keep him, and I'm completely fine with it as an Ohio State fan. I would love it for Coach Harbaugh to stay there as long as possible because I like seeing Ohio State go against Harbaugh coach teams.
Is Joe Milton – you talk about Joe Milton as a young guy. Sure, this is his first season starting. He's a junior. Joe Milton's a junior. He is not exactly a young guy. He's a junior. He's an upperclassman. So,
but I mean,
he's not figuring out. Experience is the thing. But he's a junior. How long is he going to have to figure it out? One more season? I mean, you've got the free year of eligibility, though. That's the thing. So maybe
if he wants 2 more years, you can take him. Yeah,
he can. That's the thing. That's what we forget about. I think we forget about that all too often. That's on me too. So maybe he does. He's got 3 years if he wants them. But traditionally, this guy would only have one more year after this, and I don't think this season inspires a lot of confidence in him. After, sure, he tore apart Minnesota, but any quarterback with a pulse can tear apart Minnesota. He's just looked bad in every other game, quite frankly.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think he hasn't looked good enough to win, but we've seen signs of what can be to come in the future. Like we said, he has 2 full seasons after this.
He's raw.
A lot of time to get better.
Raw. He's got 2 more seasons if he wants them. If he wants them.
He's a raw talent. He's not developed yet, but he very well could be. And like I said, he's not a young guy in the sense of his age, but experience really matters more than age, I think, in this context. And the fact that he doesn't have much of it says a lot. But he's got a whole lot of time to develop, a whole lot of time to get experience. This year for him is really more about getting snaps, getting looks, playing good defenses, and getting used to being the QB1 of a team like Michigan. So I think that's more important than anything here. We've got to keep that in mind when talking about this guy.
Right. And somebody who is not young in experience or in age is Don Brown, Michigan's defensive coordinator, who shockingly was not fired after the Indiana game. And even more shockingly is yet to be fired after this Wisconsin game. I guess they're going to retain him for the rest of the year if they're not firing him yet. He's been awful, and Michigan needs to move on from him as soon as possible. They could have a replacement, though. Could Will Muschamp be the Michigan defensive coordinator? Makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's another reason why Harbaugh could stay coach Michigan, is if he gets a new defensive coordinator, he can say, hey, look, it's just the defense's fault. Now we've got a new guy coming in. It's going to be a whole new team. Don't get rid of me. We don't need any more rebuilding. We got this new defensive coordinator who's going to do a great job for us. So he could play that card. And like I said earlier, I don't think there's really any hope that Harbaugh leaves Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's up for you to decide if you're a Michigan fan. But Muschamp to Michigan is a very real possibility. And if you're Harbaugh, that's exactly what you want to happen.
Yeah, oh, that'd be huge for Michigan. I think as poor of a head coach as Will Muschamp kind of is, he'd be a great defensive coordinator. He was a good defensive coordinator at Florida. He can get it done. I think that'd be a great hire for Michigan. I kind of see him going to the Alabama route of fired head coach who gets his legs back under him under Nick Saban, like so many guys have done.
I could see that. But I mean, another thing is Harbaugh and Saban are not on the same plane at all. So how well could he really get back on his feet? Maybe he will go to Alabama. We'll see.
Yeah, that's the thing. But he could also, if he turns around the Michigan defense, that's maybe even a bigger deal than getting the coach under Saban, because that seems like a pretty tough challenge at this point.
You're right. So player in the game of this one, I got to go Mertz. Not really much question for me.
I'm going Jalen Berger.
I respect that.
Jalen Berger here. I'm going Jalen Berger because he just kind of came out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere. I knew him as a recruit, and I knew he was going to Wisconsin. But I think he kind of came out of nowhere in this game. He didn't really expect him to get a lot of touches. Didn't really maybe even expect him to see the field because they were so committed to Groshek and Nakia Watson. I don't think those are the guys anymore. I think their days are kind of behind them because, truthfully, they weren't that good at running backs. They were pretty below average by Wisconsin standards. Berger's got a high ceiling, and he could be the next guy at running back for Wisconsin. It's really looking like he's going to be.
I like that pick, but I just got to go Mertz. Once again, he's the best young quarterback in the Big Ten, best young quarterback in college football. He's going to win a Heisman by the time his career is over, unless he gets hit with some sort of injury. He wins a Heisman before he leaves those doors of Wisconsin.
Or
perhaps if he leaves after next season, because that would be his third year out of high school, maybe he doesn't get it because there are so many good quarterbacks in right now. But if he plays football for Wisconsin for 3 years, there's no way he doesn't get a Heisman.
Bold words from Reid Murray about Graham Mertz at Wisconsin.
As I used to say in our intro, I'm not afraid to be bold.
Not afraid to be bold, though. You older First and 10 fans will remember that. But maybe even from episode 1. I don't know if you remember episode 1, preseason preview and introduction. Those of you who are around for that will remember that Reid Murray is, in fact, not afraid to be bold. Let's move into our bowl projections. He's not. That's the thing.
I'm still not.
He has never been afraid to be bold once, and I'm not sure Reid Murray will ever be afraid to be bold. But let's move into our bowl projections here. So first, the Big Ten has got bowl tie-ins with the Guaranteed Rate Bowl, Pinstripe Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl, Music City Bowl, Citrus Bowl, and Outback Bowl. They have tie-ins with those because the Rose Bowl is a playoff game this year. The Big Ten champion does not get an automatic Rose Bowl bid. However, there's also the College Football Playoff in the New Year's Six, the Cotton Bowl, a New Year's Six game with at-large bids, Chick-fil-A Bowl, which is the New Year's Six game with at-large bids, and the Fiesta Bowl, New Year's Six game with at-large bids. So the Big Ten could theoretically send a team to any of those bowl games. Reid, which of those games do you want to start out with? Or teams? I'll let you dictate the flow of this segment.
Let's go straight to the playoff. My favorite sporting event. My prediction is that Ohio State makes it in the playoff. They go to the Rose Bowl and they face number 3 Clemson Tigers. Once again, that'll be the third time they face one another in a playoff semifinal. I think Clemson gets back on their feet after that loss to Notre Dame. I think they win the ACC championship against Notre Dame, and will be the 3 seed. And I know that this doesn't concern the Big Ten, but just for the sake of playoff picks, my other playoff matchup in the Sugar Bowl is 1 Alabama versus 4 Notre Dame. Perhaps Oregon comes in and takes that spot, but I don't really see it happening. I think Notre Dame gets in there. But those are my playoff picks after week 4 of Big Ten football.
I have the same playoff pick as you, Reid, and I think it only changes really if number 1, Notre Dame beats Clemson the second time, or number 2, maybe Oregon wins out, or number 3, Ohio State loses, which the only teams I could see them losing to really at this point are Indiana and Wisconsin. Those are the only teams I think they could drop one to. Everybody else, I think Ohio State has got a safe victory against. But I've got Ohio State in the Rose Bowl too as the number 3 team. Number 2 actually taking on number 3 Clemson. I think Ohio State will be undefeated. Clemson's obviously already got that one loss, and I think Clemson will get the number 3 spot over number 4 Notre Dame because of the Trevor Lawrence factor. You got to remember Trevor Lawrence didn't play in the loss to Notre Dame. He's probably going to play in the win over Notre Dame, assuming that that's what happens in the ACC championship and that's how it shakes out. I think that's how it's going to go down.
Yeah, and let's move on into the New Year's Six. I only have one Big Ten team making the New Year's Six outside of the playoff. That is the Wisconsin Badgers. I have them going to the Orange Bowl and taking on the Miami Hurricanes. I wouldn't have Miami in the New Year's Six, but you got to remember that there is the ACC Orange Bowl tie-in. No matter how many teams they have in the playoff or whatever the situation is, they will always have an Orange Bowl team, unless, of course, the Orange Bowl is a playoff semifinal, which I think is kind of nonsense. But that's just the way it is. That's just how the bowl games are currently run. So Miami makes it Orange Bowl. I got them taking on Wisconsin. That'll actually, fun fact, not only will it be the second Miami-Wisconsin Orange Bowl in the last 5 years, that'll be the third time they've met in the last 4 seasons in bowl seasons. In the bowl season, they faced each other in the Orange Bowl. They went to Yankee Stadium for the Pinstripe Bowl the following year. Last season, they did not face one another. Wisconsin played Oregon in the Rose Bowl. But if they play each other this season, 3 out of 4 seasons, Wisconsin will play Miami in bowl season. How bizarre would that be?
How bizarre indeed. The new Michigan versus Florida, if you will.
Yes.
But I've got Wisconsin going to the Cotton Bowl, the Cotton Bowl Classic in Texas against Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati can win out and still somehow not make the playoff just because they're a G5 team. And it's tough to make the playoff for your G5 team, especially in a year like this where you're not playing any non-conference games. So I've got Wisconsin playing Cincinnati.
I can see that happening. I think Cincinnati definitely makes the New Year's Six, and I think this would be a great year to have 2 New Year's Six teams in the playoff because Cincinnati and BYU both deserve it. They both
2
earned
G5
it.
teams.
Sorry, what did I say?
New Year's Six teams.
My bad. I meant to say G5 teams in the New Year's Six. My apologies for that. But I think Cincinnati BYU will both make it, and it'd be interesting if they played each other. I like to see G5 teams playing Power 5 teams, so it's not ideal, but it would be an interesting thing to see. But moving on into your more blue-collar regular bowl games, in the Citrus Bowl, arguably the best bowl game outside of the New Year's Six, I have the Hoosiers taking on the Georgia Bulldogs. And I think Indiana would probably win this one, to be honest with you. But I think that would be one of the best bowl matchups of bowl season, obviously outside of the playoff. That'd be an exciting one. And that would be one of the best postseason games Indiana's ever played in.
I actually have the exact same matchup. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I've got the Hoosiers playing Georgia in the Citrus Bowl too. I think they could make a New Year's Six game, totally possible. They'd have to beat Ohio State and Wisconsin, or at least one of Ohio State or Wisconsin, you think. But they could make a New Year's Six game. They could feasibly make the playoff. It's totally possible that Indiana makes the college football playoff, given the way they've played so far. Have to beat Ohio State, have to beat Wisconsin to do it, but they could. But I've got them in the Citrus Bowl for now. I'm kind of tempering those expectations. I think Georgia is a likely opponent because they are a good SEC team, but not a great SEC team, not a New Year's Six SEC team. And I don't even think Georgia's all that good. I think they're good because they're Georgia. The quarterback situation's a mess. The offense as a whole is kind of a mess. And I think Indiana would beat Georgia.
Yeah.
To be quite
frank.
I'm
tired of seeing people say Georgia's making the New Year's Six with this 4 SEC teams in the New Year's Six. Baloney, nonsense, tomfoolery. I don't like it at all. And Georgia in the New Year's Six, come on. They got curb stomped by a good Florida team. But it doesn't matter how good Florida is. You can't lose to them like that and expect to make the New Year's Six. I got them in the Citrus against Indiana. Moving on to the Outback Bowl. This is what I alluded to earlier when I was talking about Northwestern. I have them in the Outback Bowl taking on Auburn. Now, Auburn is currently ranked and they have a good record, but let's not forget about 3 of those wins shouldn't have happened, and they all came at the hands of bad calls from the referees. Auburn's not a good team, and I think if they were to go against Northwestern, by the way, Auburn seems to own the Outback Bowl. It seems to be the bowl game they go to every single year, but that's a bit beside the point. I think Northwestern would blow the doors off of Auburn. And I think it's kind of a shame that Northwestern, I think they're not going to get a great bowl game matchup because they're going to end up, and I think the Outback Bowl, I don't think there's much question to that unless they shock the world and beat Wisconsin, win out, potentially lose to Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. I think pretty much every scenario has them in the Outback Bowl, and there's not a lot of good matchups because the SEC they're 4 good teams, and then after that it goes downhill from there. So if they don't get in one of those matchups with, say, Florida, Georgia, or A&M, they're going to face a rough team who's about 5-5 from the SEC, and it won't be pretty.
I've got Northwestern in the Outback Bowl too. I've got them against Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M drops a couple games down the stretch. They won't be playing this weekend, but I think they drop something down the stretch. They're bound to. Texas A&M always falls apart in November. That's just a fact. They never don't. So I've got Northwestern and Texas A&M in the Outback Bowl. 3 more bowl games: Pinstripe, Duke's Mayo Bowl, and Music City Bowl. What do you think?
I have Purdue going to the Duke's Mayo Bowl against North Carolina. Last week, actually on Friday when I did my first bowl projections of the season, I had Penn State in this game. Then they went on and lost to Nebraska. So now Purdue moves up to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, which, by the way, why is it called the Duke's Mayo Bowl? That makes it sound like a total joke of a Group 5 bowl game. Because, I mean, if you think about it, Purdue's a respectable team. North Carolina's a respectable team. These are 2 good teams going to a bowl game. You would want it to have a more prestigious name than Duke's Mayo.
The former Belk Bowl. Yeah,
and even the Belk Bowl
in Charlotte.
It's awful. But I'd take Belk Bowl over Duke's Mayo. Duke's Mayo just sounds like a fake bowl game from a TV show or something. But regardless, I have Purdue going.
It sounds like a Tommy Devine joke. Those of you who are familiar with the Tommy Devine podcast that we appear on often, Tommy would be like, "Yeah, they're going to go to the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Send them to a bowl of mayo. How about
that?" That is a good Tommy impression. I like that a lot.
But Tommy, I agree. I'm also sending your team to the Duke's Mayo Bowl, the Purdue Boilermakers. I think they play Virginia Tech in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, though. I think that's their matchup.
I can see it. Yeah, the ACC has a few teams in that range. You got UNC, Virginia Tech, Boston College potentially. If Pitt really gets their act together like they did early in the season, maybe they could sneak into a mid-tier bowl game like that. So the ACC, they have a few teams who could get into that Duke's Mayo game. Music City Bowl, my hometown, my stadium, Nissan Stadium. I have the opposite of my team, Michigan, going to Nashville to take on the Kentucky Wildcats, which I would like to see that game. I would like to go to it if I can get tickets and root against Michigan, although, of course, I would have to cheer for Kentucky. But I think Michigan gets into this game. I think Michigan ends up with a poor record, but they're a big name, and and I think they're going to end up with a close to 500 record, so that'll be enough. I don't think there's any way Michigan doesn't go bowling, just considering the fact that they're called the Michigan Wolverines is going to get them into a game like this. And I think it'd be a good game against Kentucky that they would lose.
Yeah, I've actually got this game. I don't think Michigan goes bowling. I've got Michigan not going bowling. I've got Iowa in this game against Auburn.
I'd like to see that one. Actually, I wouldn't because, or at least I wouldn't want to go to it because I don't want to be around Auburn fans. I find them pretty annoying, to be completely honest. But I could see Iowa getting into this game. Problem is, I just don't think Iowa. I think Iowa finds a way to lose to Penn State, and they find a way to lose a few more games down the stretch, and they might miss out on bowl season. I still have them making a bowl game, but I think miss out. Moving on.
Final game.
Bowl. Oh, what were you gonna say?
This is our final game, right?
No, I got the
final tie. Well, this is the last tie-in for the Big Ten.
Well, you still got the pinstripe.
Yeah, the pinstripe. Yeah, this is the last one.
Oh, I thought you were saying the Music City Bowl is the final one.
No, the pinstripe's the last one.
Okay.
I've got the Maryland Terrapins going to the Pinstripe Bowl against Boston College.
Yeah. This one's tough because you got to choose for this one for me. I got to choose between Maryland, Penn State, and Iowa. It's tough because on one hand, Penn State is 0-4. They're bad and they're not trending in the right direction. But on the other hand, I think they find a way to beat Iowa. They will beat Rutgers. I think they will beat Michigan State. Possible they beat Michigan. Possible they win their crossover. I mean, they're still Penn State. Maryland, I think they could be overhyped. The fact that they don't have Ohio State in their resume could help them in terms of their record. But I think they could find a way to lose a few games. I actually have Penn State getting in this one. I have them in a repeat of the 2014 Pinstripe Bowl against Boston College. This is back when Christian Hackenberg was with Penn State. And I believe Penn State ended up winning that one in a close one. But I have Penn State going there once again, as much as I hate to say it, because Penn State really does not deserve a bowl game. But if it comes down to a Maryland team and a Penn State team who have the same record, just knowing the bowl committee, they're going to choose Penn State because it's going to get more eyes to turn the game on the TV, and it's going to sell more tickets, sell more merch, sell more all that. It's all about money in this industry. So Penn State gets in for me.
I don't know if they would pick Penn State over Maryland because I think it's easy to kind of call their BS on that because Maryland has got the head-to-head win over Penn State and a dominant one at that. I don't think Penn State goes bowling, though. I think they're out this year. Anyway, that'll be our show for today. Thank you for listening to the First and 10 podcast. For Reid Murray, I'm Patrick Phelps. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Bye.